So welcome everybody to our town hall where we are addressing a major topic right now that's going on with small businesses, the CARE Act and the Paycheck Protection Plan. Of course, we are going to continue just to keep talking about this. And I'm happy actually to welcome, we have had some slight technical difficulties with our guest. He might be able to join us later, but we are welcoming Kirby Atwell, who is Bunker Labs CFO and who has been digging deep into this issue. So welcome, Kirby. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Liz.
And I know we're having no shortage of technical difficulties with everybody as everyone jumps on Facebook Live and Zoom. So this is pretty common these days while we're working from home. But Kirby, so if you could just give us an overview quickly just about the PPP and, how this affects small businesses so we can get into the details.
Yeah, sure. So just sort of up front too, what the intent behind today's session is. We did a live session with the veteran and residence members last Friday. And this is sort of a continuation of that. We're going to go over a lot of the same stuff, but just sort of awareness. This has been sort of all over the news recently, and there's a lot in it. So Congress passed the CARES Act, or signed off by Congress and the president two Fridays ago. So it's been almost 2 weeks now. And part of this CARES Act, it was a $2 trillion stimulus program, and part of it was $350 billion was going to be devoted to this Paycheck Protection Program, which the intent behind it is to support small businesses who are going through issues right now with the whole COVID shutdown. And really it's to support them being able to pay their employees. So it's not just general support for the business, but it's very specific, and it's a very different type of loan than most loan products that are out there. It's purely based on a business's payroll. So that's what the Paycheck Protection is, and I can get into some of the details of who's eligible and other stuff if you want to dig into that.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to dig into that. I just want to, though, be kind of transparent with people and talk about it's ever changing, right? It's been changing ever since it came out. I know that we did our session, I think last Friday. It was out on Thursday, and then there were changes Friday, and people keep telling me the applications keep changing. Can you just speak to that and where to find the most current information and how small businesses can make sure that they're staying relevant so that their applications are valid?
Yeah. And if you think about so typically an act of this size or a new law of this size that, mandates changes, there's going to be months and months, if not years of time for the Treasury and other departments to dig into it and clarify what the law means. And so they'll hold town halls and they'll get feedback from people who are starting to use it. And it's a slow process. This was we're signing this law. We want to get a ton of money into the hands of small business owners as quick as possible. And anytime that happens, it's a little fuzzy at best in terms of the exact specifics. So what we have is a broad list of rules, and then daily it's there's new scenarios that are coming up and adjustments to those rules. And so. Last Friday was the first day that applications were open, supposedly. A lot of banks did not have applications open at that time, but that was the official first day for small businesses. And then April 10th is the first time that contractors or self-employed people can apply for it. So, but each day there's new rules coming out, and there's new nuances to what's allowed and what's not allowed.
That's great. Thank you for the overview. So also, this might be a question. I know that I was part of a free webinar yesterday that we talked about all these little nitty-gritty details. So can you talk about the eligibility? What makes you eligible as a small business owner? And you did just bring up that, now contractors, and it's different for solopreneurs. So what makes a company or small business eligible in order to apply for this?
Yeah, and that's why we're talking so much about this here in Bunker Labs, is because it's really perfect for our community. Who's eligible is small business owners with 500 or fewer employees, and that can be a nonprofit, it can be a solopreneur, it can be an independent contractor. So as long as you have 500 or less employees, then you're eligible, and and it's, again, it's purely based on your payroll in terms of how much you're eligible for.
And how might it differ, for instance, eligibility for those solopreneurs or for people that don't have a brick and mortar?
Yeah, so the banks are not going to look at your traditional lending standards. Typically they're going to look at your collateral and your financial statements. What they want to see is the past year. So if you go back 12 months, actually it's 2019. I think they clarified it's 2019 payroll. So you pull up your 2019 payroll, and it's initially they said you can include contractors in that, but then they clarified it to say that it's not contractors. But you're going to pull up your 2019 payroll and take the average 1 month amount of your payroll, and then you multiply that by 2.5. And so you're eligible for basically 2.5 months of whatever your payroll is. And then there's some nuances to that. If you have people who are making over 100,000, they're capped at 100,000, so you can't include anything more than that. But that's the amount that you're eligible for. And apparently it came out yesterday that the average that businesses are applying for is about 170,000 is what the average so far that they've seen come in.
And that's for that 2.5 months that they're saying that they can cover. So another misconception about this is that, can small businesses use these funds for loans that have already been taken out?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you think about the intent, I think it's really important, especially when the rules aren't all clarified, to think through what the intent is behind this to make sure you stay compliant with it. So the intent is that if you have a business with payroll, the government doesn't want you to just lay everybody off at this time. It's painful for everyone. So they want to give you this forgivable loan that, as long as you use it to pay people and keep them employed for this, hopefully it's a couple month period of time, then they're going to forgive this loan. So you calculate the amount that you're eligible for based on 2.5 times your average payroll. But then going forward, you're supposed to use at least 75% of the loan amount on payroll and a few other expenses like rent, utilities, or a mortgage payment. I'm sorry, 75% is supposed to be on payroll. 25% can be used on those other expenses like rent. They specify there's like 5 different expenses. So as long as you're using it, the portion that you're using for payroll, that part is forgiven. So 100% forgiven. You have to use it within 60 days after receiving the loan, though. So that's the stipulations. And if you don't use it for that, then it turns into a 2-year loan. So it's really not like a terrible scenario if you have to pay it back. It's not like the terms of this loan. It's a 1% loan for 2 years. All the payments are deferred for the first 6 months. So it's a great loan to get in terms of comparing it to other loan products that are out there. But it's even better if you can use it for payroll and you can get it all forgiven.
Absolutely. So it looks like our slight technical difficulties have figured themselves out, and Kirby and I are now able to welcome Blake Hogan, of course, our Bunker Labs interim CEO, and Representative Mark Green from Tennessee. So thank you both for being here. Blake, I'll just turn it over to you.
Yeah, all right, thanks. So, well, Kirby, as always, being an entrepreneur, stepping up, making it happen. So thanks for jumping in. Not everybody has a Kirby, so take that.
Not everyone wants one,
right? I mean, look, I want one. I think it's as we look at what's going on right now, the whole point of what we're doing here at Bunker is to help folks either stay in the fight or to learn from people who have been in the fight in the past. So I was, thankful to have the opportunity to, have Kirby come in and do this, and then to bring in my friend Mark Green. So I've known Mark for quite a while here in Tennessee, and Mark is, accomplished Army veteran. The only, negative there is Army instead of Marine Corps. But Kirby, yeah, you can unmute now. I can see him looking for the unmute button.
Exactly.
Kirby's a fellow West Pointer, so you guys can, do some secret handshake. So Mark is author and entrepreneur with a really interesting company, Align MD, which brought the Special Forces medical model into hospitals. So has an interesting viewpoint, having served, having been an entrepreneur, and having been a doctor. My point, being the simple Marine, was like, can we just like cut through the noise and see, hey, what is going on with these bills, and what do you think is kind of the best way to navigate that as an entrepreneur? And then, Mark, you do those kind of 2-minute quick videos where you sort of broke down like the actual X's and O's of it. So I'd love to talk about that if you don't mind.
Sure.
And Kirby, you can fact check my questions. I tried to print the bill out and read it, but
I'll translate it from Marine to Army.
Okay, thanks.
Well, thanks, Blake, for having me on. Thanks for everybody at Bunker Labs for what you do. For the job placement isn't the thing we want. I mean, we want job placement for our veterans, but what we really want is entrepreneurial training, because we want the generation coming out of this war to be the next great generation that goes out there and builds the companies that transform America. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I've put my money where my mouth is. And written some checks to Bunker Labs, as you know, and I'm a 100% believer in what you're doing and how you're educating. Because there are things that the military teaches us. It teaches us how to lead people. It teaches us, how to move supplies. I mean, you get supply chain management in the military when you pick up an organization and move it all across the world and then resupply it for an extended period of time overseas. We don't get sources of capital, though, because we're not out there raising money. Right. And unless you're in recruiting command, you don't get the opportunity. So Bunker Labs is out there doing all those great things. And gosh, I love you guys for it. I think if I were given any piece of advice off of the legislation that's out there right now, and I think Kirby was talking about it when I came into it, is the PPP loan and some of the other small business loan products that are out there. Don't just get stovepiped into the PPP loan. There is emergency disaster relief. There are other loan products out there that are a part of this CARES Act that are assets and available there for small businesses. And I'd encourage you to look at all of those. I will say, Kirby, on the loan for the PPP piece, that's now 10 years. And the portion that doesn't get turned into a grant switches from 1% to 4%. So at the end of the period, if you've hired back the people and the entire amount gets waived, if let's say you had 20 employees and you hired back 18, 2 of those employees, their payroll will get put into that extended loan, which is now in the third bill that was written, a 10-year loan at 4%. Still an amazing deal, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew about those changes that were in the phase 3 bill. And with that, I mean, Blake, fire away.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of questions on that. So one is just I'd love to maybe go into a little bit of detail, or maybe it might already be up on our website, Kirby, on the Small Business Owner Guide to the CARES Act. But so I know a lot of like smaller companies that are under 50 folks are, like I said, not everybody has a Kirby, so they either don't have the right lender, certain lenders aren't accepting, some already are full. So one, do you think the money is a finite amount? And then do you think there's another tranche that comes out? Or do you think it's just more of like the money's not actually all spoken for? It's caught up in like just the process of trying to process all that. Because I think
Yeah.
what we're so, and why I'm asking that is what we're hearing is from like the smaller companies is like, I bank with a fintech company. I don't have a traditional business banker. And I can't, or I'm an S corp and I use an owner's draw, so I don't have a W-2. And so, so some of those things would be helpful to go through.
So I caught, I think, at least two or three questions in there. The first one was about amounts of loans and whether or not, where we are in the distribution of the loans, and is there going to be second tranche of money? And
Right.
then the other issue was about, I think, 1099s. Is that what you were implying there towards the end, and what you do with those? Okay, so the first part of that, there was $366 million or billion. We don't do much with millions in Washington, D.C. It's all billions, unfortunately, unless, of course, you're funding the Kennedy Center, and then it's just 25 million. But I digress. The $366 billion is there for us now, and we've spent about 100 billion. Last night, in fact, I was on a call with the Small Business Administration director just before this, and we crossed the 100 billion mark in money out the door. Now, those loans haven't necessarily been closed yet, because then your bankers, they get the approval. And I was talking to a local banker here. He's in about 30 million right now, and he's starting to close those loans. But 100 billion has been approved. That leaves about 266 billion, and at the pace that the applications are coming in, we know for a fact that's not enough money. So your question is a good one. And the president very quickly made a request, he and Mnuchin, for another 250 billion. Actually, at first it was 221 billion, and then it became 250 billion. Leader McConnell today brought that bill to the floor of the Senate to actually approve an extra $250 billion to that program. And that program encompasses both the PPP, the 7A loan, the 504 loan, the emergency injury disaster loans. And unfortunately, the other side of the aisle shot it down. They wouldn't let it go through. So we don't know exactly why. They probably want to put some other stuff onto it. We'll get that package out of the Senate, hopefully at the beginning of next week. And then by the middle of the week, it comes to the House, and we'll see what it is, and hopefully we do need that program to grow.
Yeah.
It didn't have enough money in it from the start.
Sure.
So 100 billion spent of the 366 billion, with probably another 250 plus coming. 1099s. So a decision was just recently made, because there's a separate loan program for independent contractors. So if, let's say, you've got a business and you're paying everybody a 1099, you're not going to qualify for the PPP.
Right.
Now, that was kind of a surprise to my wife, who runs 2 CrossFit gyms. She owns 2 CrossFit gyms. And obviously she's been forced to be closed. So she's cut the billing that she's doing to her people, because she can't provide the service. She can't apply for the loan, because all of her instructors, all of her employees are 1099 employees. So what those employees can do, though, is turn around and apply for their own loan, because they're essentially independent contractors. And because this program set it up so that independent contractors, you got painters, you got, particularly in the construction industry.
Yeah, all your subs.
Maybe some in the healthcare industry. Those folks, so they can just apply on their own, and then there's no reason for payroll protection for them. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah. So I think part of it is around just like finding lenders. So Kirby, I know you've run into this, or trying to folks that are trying to find lenders. Is there, because it was such a massive amount, such a short period of time, such a big program, you had people that were just, for sake of being able to get things out the door, we're going with our customers, our current customers. Do you see this expanding to, non-bank lenders or other lenders, or to be able to expand that pool, to make it, because what I hear is, like, I think of like Derek Jackson in the Carolinas, who has a company called Grass Grazed LLC. He's a Army veteran. He's growing chickens and pigs, and he's doing fresh meat, delivery, right? So it's like
Raise pigs, by the way, Blake.
Yeah.
You grow corn, but just anyway. Go ahead.
yeah. No, that's what I said. I think I'm like a pretty accomplished farmer.
Love you, man.
Yeah, right. But like right now, he's like, I gotta tend to the farm so that I can like get people meat, so they don't have to go to the grocery store. And he's like, I don't have time to mess with the bank, and I'm stuck in this queue. So I think the folks that are like the earliest of stages are the ones that are at like the most unique challenge of trying to navigate this. So do you see any of that, any other sort of non-bank lenders, or is it just like, if we put in more cash, it gives people more time to be able to go back to it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you're talking about, initially the program was going to go out to SBA approved lenders only. And that was the initial plan. And so I think it was a week ago, I called Mark Meadows, who's the chief of staff of the president. And I said, hey, that's not going to work. That pipeline is not big enough to get the money to the businesses in our communities, at least in the state of Tennessee, fast enough.
Yep.
So they increased the flow of the pipeline by any banking institution and credit union that's licensed in the state of Tennessee or in your state, wherever you are, can now do these program loans. And we've actually had, now there is a process they have to go through, and it's abbreviated, and they become a temporary SBA lender. And at least from what I'm hearing, the loans that are being held up are in that category right now. So they've expanded it to include any banking institution. What I think you asked, your question was other sort of sources of capital that can tap into that. Maybe they're small cap venture funds and things like that. One of the things I'm trying to do, and this is more from a national security standpoint than anything, but I think since it's Bunker Labs that we're talking to, most everyone's gonna appreciate this. China is taking the advantage right now of us, and they're buying small aviation companies. We are seeing this happen. They're buying avionics companies. They're buying these small startup potential defense industry businesses, and there's not venture capital backing to help those businesses because they're having cash flow problems. So they're on the auctioning block. And there may be somebody in this audience who got out of the military, has a great idea, is struggling with capital. We're trying to come up with something similar to SBA for those venture capitals for small cap startup security-based companies. Now, will we create something for all? I don't know, and I'll have to owe you an answer on that one. But I know there's talk right now. In fact, my team's writing some legislation to support venture funds, PE funds that are in the small cap market that can come underneath these companies that are struggling, that are potential national security issues. I know that doesn't completely answer your question, but it does partially, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the broader point was to, when you're in a fight, sometimes kicking down the door isn't always the best option. Sometimes it makes sense to go around. And right. And I think what we've decided as an organization to do is to be positive and forward thinking, and that we've been through past crises before. So part of what I wanted folks to be able to hear was, hey, there's that Congress is working to try to have an additional tranche of capital and trying to broaden this program, because I think a lot of folks are like, well, I didn't get into this first round. I didn't have the right bank. I didn't have that in place. So now I'm just screwed. And so I think reassuring people that like, maybe it'll pass, maybe it won't pass, but we're working towards that. So that's okay. I've got some good questions coming through on the federal side. Let's see. Federal government is absent supporting equity.
And I hope.
Yeah.
I hope answer, so.
Okay. Oversight. Big since I've seen the other ones. Okay. What is? Do you have any insight into why people might be denied on the economic injury disaster loan. And you know, is it like, you know, I can think of a lot of folks like that aren't accountants, or they haven't done this before, and it is, you know, that would be some sort of like the tactical stuff around.
So an example of not qualifying for economic injury stuff would be, and there are several reasons, but one example might be, what is your time window?
Yep.
You know, for example, if your business started 1 January 2020, you're not gonna, your average income and your average cost of doing business is only going to have 1 month in the calculations window. So that's not going to qualify you, because they're using a 12-month average over starting, going basically 31 January 19 through 31 January 2020.
Yep.
And those time windows can sometimes be problematic. Now, there are other loan products out there. There's 7A, there's 504 that are through the SBA. Those might be a better option for someone whose time window isn't just right. And there are other reasons too. The best thing to do at your congressman if you find that you fall into a window. So if you fall into a hole, let me use that term, and there's not a product out there that covers your particular business, pick up the phone, call your congressman and say, hey, I don't fit these categories. What's going to happen to me? And I think your congressman will get up on the net, so to speak, and we'll have a solution soon. There are going to be some holes in the CARES Act and in the Families First Act. And, you know, this is our third bill. There are probably going to be more to correct some of the, I mean, it's almost impossible. This is a huge, you know, multi-trillion-dollar economy, and trying to put the brakes on it 100% and then turn around and figure out how to fix it it's going to take some time.
Yeah. So, you know, this is unprecedented, right? Like it's, you know, use a doctor, I don't know, maybe done some research around Spanish flu, but, you know, I look at this, so this is a bit off topic. But, you know, I look at this with, as an opportunity to unite our country and unite our world. This is the first time since the Spanish flu that we've had an opportunity to talk to the whole world and say, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the spirit of transparency, we, you know, got some negative feedback on some of the past comments that were probably incorrectly reported. You know, I've known you from a long time ago, but as Bunker, we have a value around open and honest and transparent communication. So, you know, I'd love for you to just kind of quickly address some of those comments specifically around LGBT and Muslims. And then, you know, I want to make sure we get into the meat of this, but I wanted to address that. And so.
You're having questions about some people who have heard comments that I've made in the past. Is that what I understand you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's very unfortunate that, you know, honestly, if I believed everything that the press said about me, I'd hate me too. And that's the unfortunate thing of the world we live in now. Some of the stuff that was said about me and the LGBTQ stuff, particularly when I was nominated for Secretary of the Army, was, you know, very frustrating for us. And we tried to get the truth out there, but the press didn't want to hear it at the time. And my dearest and deepest held belief is that any American who's qualified to serve in the military should be able to serve in the military. And that doesn't matter, you know, gender, you know, any of that stuff. It's all about, can you meet the standard that the military has set? And if you can meet the standard, and those standards are legit and they need to be make sense for the job that the military is asking a person to do, then that person should be able to serve their country. There was a video of me in 2009 when I was talking about my book, and someone asked me, that was, you may recall, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was being undone. And I was in a relatively conservative organization or meeting, and they asked me, expecting that I would be against doing away with don't ask, don't tell. And I said, no, every person, gay, straight, has a right to serve their country. And so when we provided that to the press, they refused to print it back during the Secretary of the Army stuff. So it's just very frustrating where the media is in America right now. And again, if I believed everything that was said about me, I wouldn't like me either. Most people who get to know me, to include members of the LGBTQ community who are my friends, they know the real me. And that's, I think, what matters the most. But, thanks for giving me a chance to clarify that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think, look, it's been a joke for a long time that my family in Minnesota is CNN, and my family here in Alabama is Fox News. So I'm squarely down the middle. So I've given you a hard time.
What are they? That's like Auburn and Alabama, or Cal and what is it, USC and UCLA. So you've got family in Minnesota and family in Alabama, and okay, I get it.
I'm clearly I can see both.
Army, Navy, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's the only time a Marine cares about Navy. But listen, I appreciate it, because I think like this moment in time gives us an opportunity to get in touch with our humanity, and that, in particular, the military community and entrepreneurs have an opportunity and, frankly, an obligation to step up and serve when it's needed most right now.
Obligation is the right term there. Obligation. Our duty is not done when our uniform gets hung on the coat hanger. We have a responsibility, and I know everybody on this call and everybody I know in the military feels that way. You get out, and and you guys are helping our veterans serve by creating jobs and making our country strong, so that we can continue to have a strong, globally forward-present military. So,
yeah. Well, let's try to keep them strong. I'm getting blasted with good questions here. So this is a good one around. Let's see, where was it? Startup pre-revenue. Can I qualify?
Okay, so they're asking revenue before your official startup date. So is this investment income that they want to?
Yeah, Liz, you might have more context on that. Okay, here it is. So if we're a startup and pre-revenue, can we get a loan and or apply for the grant? So I'm thinking this is, if insert tech company here that's got traction, has, maybe they've got some investment capital, and they're just about to close the deal, and now.
So you probably wouldn't be able to qualify for an economic injury loan, because most of those are retroactive, but the PPP was designed to be for a period of time going forward. So if you have an inability, let's say that you're a startup ride share of some time, I'm trying to think of an example here, maybe traffic demand management company. So a lot of that's going on right now. And I know y'all's headquarters is in San Francisco. Is that right?
Chicago.
Okay. San Francisco is working with a company out of Nashville. It's a dear friend of mine, and it's about traffic demand management. The company's name is Hitch, right? I don't know.
Mark Cleveland.
Mark Cleveland. So companies like that, let's say you're at the start line, you've gotten funded, you're ready to go, you know what your cash flow is going to be for your payroll. All you have to do is justify that average payroll, and then you can go and qualify for the loan. But you have to convince the SBA that that's what it would be. If you've been in business 2 months and they want a 12-month average, you give them a 2-month average and write in the remarks, we've only been in business 2 months.
Right.
That loan is supposed to cover those individuals. And if there's anybody that has a problem with that, they should contact their congressman or call me if you're a veteran, and we'll help you.
Okay, great. All right. Really specific question, and you may not have this one yet, but can applying to the disaster loan negatively affect the business or individual's credit rating?
No, they don't even do a credit rating check on most of these loans. Now, there are a couple of them going for, like if you're going with a new 7A loan that's not related to not related to COVID, but because you're borrowing in the period of COVID, they're going to defer your principal payments until the end of the year. So what an amazing time to go get a small business loan, right? You're not going to have to pay interest or payments until I think it's December of this year. If you go get that loan, I mean, all you have to do is show basically what your expenses are going to be, and kind of give me more of that question again. I think I kind of lost my train of thought there for just a second.
So the question was around on the negative credit rating. So like if I went, applied for a bunch of auto loans or mortgage loans like that could be a negative.
So yeah, the disaster ones aren't using your credit rating. That what I was trying to say is that new 7A loan is going to need, they may need collateral for that, and they may check your, but in that case, it's still worth doing it because the fact that you get such a great rate and the fact that there'll be no interest, no payments until like next year. So on those specific type loans, yes. On the PPP, on the economic disaster loans, no. They're not even looking at
Got it.
credit worthiness or collateralization, as I understand it.
So you brought up the security-based companies that concern for potential adversaries purchasing things. Is there if a company is a software company, doesn't have a hard asset, are they still do they qualify to be able to apply for these if it's not a hard asset?
For which loan are you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think just
on the PPP loan, all you need is payroll, right?
Yeah.
But as Kirby was saying when I first got on the call, you can use that money to pay for your mortgage. You can use it to pay for your other expenses, but you can only get 25% of that money that's spent on that forgiven.
Yep.
So Kirby was talking about that at the beginning of the call, and that's on the PPP loan.
Okay. All right. So one question, and then I've got a personal question. So, if you're, let me show you this, owner of an LLC who's not going to paycheck. Okay. If you're paying yourself through an owner's draw and you don't have a typical W-2, that's been one of the things we're getting a lot of on. So
yeah,
one, how do you calculate that? And two, is that, an issue?
So we had to go to the Congressional Research Service on that to get their opinions on it. And the answer is yes and no, right? It's the government. So there is a portion of that is included if you're let's say you're a sole proprietor, or you're a sole proprietor and there's multiple, like a limited partnership, not a sole proprietor, but a limited partnership. So all of that, you pay yourself only on a draw.
Yep.
Right? That's what you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Yes, some of that does count, some of that doesn't. And I can get you, what I'll do is I'll send you in an email after this so that you can share it with all of your folks, the actual official decision from Congressional Research Services on that. And I would put that in a newsletter and get that out to everybody, because I know when I first started my company, I only paid myself, on a draw when the company was, successful. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs that do it that way. So, I would rather just send you their rendition and you can send it out to all the Bunker Labs folks.
That would be great. All right, 2 more questions, and then Liz, you can let me know if we've got more coming in and out. One is, have any of the loans been funded to the or are they just in the processing stage? And do you have an idea of what the turnaround time is? And is that driven by, congressional mandate, or is that driven by the bank going, okay, now, here's the mandate, but we're actually going to check these other things, and
Yeah, a lot of it's up to the banks, but and you have to be a little bit careful because banks are competing for customers, right? So they are obviously servicing their customer first, a lot of them. So if you're going to a new institution, you may have a little bit of a delay there. you may also have a little bit more information that you have to give than the SBA requires. That's an important one to know too, because some of the banks are doing that in order to capture the business long term. But yes, some of the loans have been funded. The timeline is a combination of the bank and the pipeline going into the website at the SBA. For the most part, those previously approved SBA institutions that were already 7A approved, their pipelines are flowing. Talked to a couple of banks that are in the process of getting certified to be 7A, and they've got a temporary process now. They opened up the pipeline, as I mentioned earlier. Those have 200-300 loans being held. The vast majority of the loans that have been approved have not closed, so the check hasn't actually been written, but I know for a fact that some have. Talked to a banker today, and he was closing 15 loans today, and that's a small community bank in a town of about 150,000 people. So the money's flowing, and folks should get online and do it. The PPP loan is I think it's a 2-page application, and you have to provide your proof of like your payroll for the calculations that you use to come up with the payroll, and if you want your mortgage, you can provide your mortgage or your lease, but they're not requiring that. They need your articles of organization, and they need your EIN, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's I read through it and understood it as a Marine. So it was all of the other, if you're, an S Corp, if you're this, if you're that, that made it challenging. Okay. Putting your entrepreneur kind of hat back on here. Every obstacle is an opportunity. It depends on your perspective. What's your viewpoint on, where the economy is going? And then very specifically around all these small businesses around, there's this massive transfer of wealth from baby boomers that have businesses. They're looking at retiring. It is a way for a lot of veterans and folks that don't have a ton of capital to purchase a business. What is your frame of reference on going on the offense and buying something right now? And then just sort of generally, as we wrap up, what's your look? What's your view of the economy going forward over the next 2 years?
Sure. So obviously in the near term, we thought we'd have 7 million unemployed. We had 6.6 million unemployed. But the government's response, I think, is going to create that hockey puck. The economy was setting records with both unemployment, GDP growth, wage growth. The things that sort of delay out a recession, we're all doing great. The fundamentals of the economy are in a good spot, and I think depending on how long we have to sit with everything at full stop, and then how long we delay sort of stair-stepping the economy back up, and people talk about, and if you're in a business, in a community, you should contact your chamber of commerce, you should contact your local mayors, and be a part of reopening the economy. Be a part of planning the reopening process. Because there are things like, well, maybe the square footage of my retail space will determine when I can open up. Mm-hmm. Maybe the fact that I have a texting system that I can text an employee or a customer, okay, the last customer just left, you can come in. What it looks like as we stair-step back up the economy is going to determine the overall GDP and the big numbers on the economy for the year. But I think it's very positive because we're infusing massive amounts of capital. We're working on both the demand side and the supply side, right? So on the demand side, we're sending out a $1,200 check to every person less than 75. So if you're a couple with 2 kids and you make less than 75,000 bucks, you're getting $2,400 to the parents, and then $500. So that's $3,400 going to that family in the next week or so. That's going to be on the demand side because most Americans were consumers, so we're going to spend that money. maybe we've learned a little bit from this and we saved some of it. I don't know, but a lot of it will get spent. So that fixes the demand side. On the supply side, you've got this PPP loan. You've got all these other loans that help the businesses prop up and continue to deliver their services. So you're fixing, the government's goal here is to fix both the supply side and the demand side. So we've got a little bit of a Keynesian model and a little bit of Milton Friedman all at the same time. And hopefully, that puts us back where we were before all this started. And that's, an economy that's just blowing and going. So that's, my prediction is 3 months from now, this thing's wide open. Jobs are being created again, and we're back to the same struggles we were 2 months ago, which is finding workers. The economy 2 months ago, we couldn't find enough employees, and I think we'll be there 3 to 4 months from now.
Yeah, it's definitely a major reshuffle for sure. So thank you for making time to join us today, Liz.
Yeah.
Before we go, are any other burning questions that we missed?
I think the only question that I've gotten that might be burning for some people is how they can contact Representative Green, and what's the best avenue to contact their congressman.
Sure, that's a great question. So your congressman has a website, and that is probably the best way to go for your congressman. You just you can Google them and find their official website, and it usually has, at least mine does. Mine has my office numbers in the district across the bottom, as well as the one in DC. My email, and I'm more than willing to provide this to anybody, is mark.green@mail.house.gov, mail.house.gov. And Mark is with a K, and green is like the color, no E on the end. So mark.green@mail.house.gov. So I'd love to have anybody. I mean, my staff is back there right now listening, going, "Oh no!" But any veteran, I'm going to help, whether they're in Florida or Tennessee. Now, I may connect you to your congressman, but to get their help, just so I don't step on that congressman's toes. But if you've served, we're gonna serve you. So, and then if you're in my district and you're listening, of course, call, use that email. But every congressman has a web page with all their contact info on it.
All right.
That's great.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Congressman Mark Green. Thank you to Kirby and to Liz. We are here to help serve you as well. You can go to bunkerlabs.org/all-in to get more resources there. There's a whole series of these town hall interviews. There's another one tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern time with Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion Ryan Harris. So you're the opening act, sir.
Excellent. Well, that'll be a fun one too. And I just will, close too from me saying thank you for being a part of Bunker, and thank Bunker for what you do for veteran entrepreneurs. So,
yeah, well, thank you, sir. We'll see you back here tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And tomorrow is at noon, Liz?
Yes, and slight correction. Tonight is actually 6 p.m. Eastern time with Ryan Harris, and then tomorrow is 12 p.m. Eastern time. Keeping those time zones straight, trying to as we get through this.
Yeah, so tomorrow is Doug McCormick. He's another West Point grad. You guys might actually be similar classes. But
what is Doug's class?
Gosh, I don't know.
I think it was not early 90s, like 90, 91.
I'm 86, so I'm Pompeo and Esper and myself are all classmates. So
Mark
probably hazed him.
Right, yeah. So for those of you, you'll want to tune in on Friday at noon. Doug has a company called HCI Equities, so he's working with a ton of small and mid-sized companies. So that's going to be all about just like cash management, understanding your cash flow, and how to do that. So thank you to Mark. Thank you to the team. Thank you to Kirby and Liz. And we'll see you all soon. And in the meantime, go to bunkerlabs.org/all-in.
Thanks, Blake. Thank you guys so
Blake.
much. And we will see you at 6 p.m. Eastern time with Ryan Harris.
Thank you.
So, yeah.